My name is Jim Miller, partner at Marcum and a member of our national construction group. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Steve Bench, founder of Generational Consulting. Steve Bench is a nationally recognized speaker who delivers presentations and training sessions that offer engagement strategies for attracting and retaining millennial and Gen Z employees, empowering Gen Z management, capturing boomer wisdom, and cultivating future leadership by leveraging the strengths of each generation. Steve founded Generational Consulting in 2017 to help companies and organizations better understand generational differences, and has since shared his message with audiences across the country, earning the nickname the Millennial Guy. Steve has developed a reputation for delivering high-energy, engaging presentations that provide actionable strategies and meaningful results. Steve is also the creator of The Pitch, a visionary 501c3 organization, not-for-profit, that is best described as a Shark Tank-style business contest for teens. By nurturing young minds and cultivating their entrepreneurial spirit, The Pitch empowers the leaders of tomorrow to thrive in an ever-evolving business landscape. Please join me in welcoming Steve to the stage. Thank you.
It's crazy. He said, "Go get him, Tiger." As a millennial, my mother texts me like 10 times a day, and she actually texted me, "Go get him, Tiger," today. So how about that, right? I'm super excited to be here today. How are we doing this afternoon? I could not be more excited. We're here today to talk about how to hire and attract tomorrow's talent. So first question, anybody hiring right now? Anybody dealing with staffing and retention problems, paying for more and getting less? Then you're officially in the right room. That's what we're going to talk about today. My company's Generational Consulting, and I travel all around the country, Seattle, New York City, everywhere in between. The number one thing that we all have in common right now, regardless of what we do for our job, a now hiring sign in the window. And it's going to continue to intensify and get worse before it gets better. So that's what we're going to talk about. What gives me the confidence to speak about these issues, specifically Gen Z, is because when I'm not talking to grown-ups, I'm working with students. Raise your hand if you've seen the Shark Tank TV show. How about Price is Right game show? Come on down, homesick from school. If you mix Shark Tank with the Price is Right, you've got The Pitch. It's the most fun field trip they're gonna have all year. I go to Walmart, I buy $500 worth of sugar and candy and caffeine, get them all hyperactive. I let them take over my Spotify and DJ. They have a blast, but I have more fun than they do. I'm the big kid in the back right corner there looking over the top. And those kids learn how to be entrepreneurs. I started my first business when I was 11 years old, mowing lawns and pulling weeds, and then the granny asked me to put in a retaining wall, and I said, "Oh, sure, we've done a bunch of those." Then I was like, how do you build a retaining wall? What is a retaining wall? I was 11 years old. So you figure it out later, right? You say yes and figure it out later. So the kids learn how to be entrepreneurs. I teach them how to write a business plan, but I learned way more from these kids than I could ever teach them in one school day. So these are the students that have informed and inspired the presentation today. Sixth graders. Isn't it cute that the girls grow a little bit faster than the boys in sixth grade? They lined up like that on their own. I had to take a picture, and the kid next to me out in the audience goes, "It looks like the bars on my phone." I go, "Yeah, you're Gen Z, all right, definitely." And I'm also a basketball coach. So if you've heard about the trophy problem, I'm officially somebody to blame. I've been handing out trophies for years. Those are my boys right there. Couldn't be more proud. So I kind of give you some background so that you understand where I'm coming from. Not just some doofus millennial who Googled generational differences, although I do that all the time. But I work with thousands of students, so I want you to kind of understand what my background is. But before we can even begin to understand what these kids are going to need to be successful members of our workforce and our community, before we can even think about them, we were just figuring out the millennials, my proud generation. So as a proud millennial, I'll give you a look inside our mindset with the goal of hopefully improving our understanding of why we behave the way that we do. Because what this is ultimately really all about, it's not just generational differences. We've probably heard our fair share of how boomers and millennials are different, right? That's not very helpful. But what we're really here to talk about is the issue we're all facing with, staffing and retention. Anybody can relate to this sign? Sorry for the inconvenience, we all quit. How about this one? I spoke at a hotel a few months ago. Parents, we will train your kids to clean rooms and do laundry, apply within the hotel. Thank God my mom didn't see that back in the day. And we had staffing problems before 2020, right? It's not like these are brand new issues that just happened the last couple years. But the pandemic was this unrequested shove into work from home. And millions of people got a chance to hit pause and reset and reevaluate, what do I want to do with my work-life balance? How much time do I want to spend driving to work? So everybody kind of got a chance to reevaluate what they're going to do. And we've never had this many generations working in the workforce before. And each one of these generations had a fundamentally different childhood. They were raised differently at home, they were taught differently in school, they were coached on the sports field differently by people like me. But come Monday morning, we're all working together on the same project. So not only do we need to figure out how to overcome these differences, but we need to figure out how we can leverage them into strengths, because the community that we serve, our employees, our vendors, our suppliers, it's going to continue to get younger, more multi-generational. So we need these voices at the table. If we only had boomer leadership, or God forbid, if the world was only run by millennials, we'd kind of be monolithic. We'd be tone deaf to some of the things that the other generations might be able to kind of expose us to and open our eyes to. So here's the overview for the rest of the session this afternoon. If you want to understand how to hire, train, and retain the next generation of talented employees, that discussion begins with the veterans, boomers, and Gen Xers, the people you already got on board. Because if they feel like we're just changing all the rules to cater to this new generation that doesn't work as hard, you're going to lose the leadership you already got. And your culture's never going to be a good fit for a young employee that needs to learn everything about their new career. So if you want to understand how to attract tomorrow's talent, you got to engage today's leadership. So we're going to talk about how we got to where we are today, and then moving forward, I'm going to leave you with an action plan. I'm going to make you think. I'm going to hopefully make you laugh. We're going to have some fun. But if I don't leave you with the now what, the where do we go from here? Yeah, we know we're different. What can we do about it? That's what we're going to finish with today. So here's the generations coming up on the screen. You know these names. Next to the names is the years they were born. Parentheses is how old they are today. So who comes after Gen Z? Somebody in my industry is going to write a book or coin a clever term. We're going to have a name for them. I've heard them called the Alpha Gen. The Alpha Gen, why? Because we are on Z and we just go to Alpha. That's the least creative name I've ever thought of for the most creative kids I've ever worked with. Oh, maybe they're the Alpha Gen because they're alphas, like the generation that can't even make eye contact, look you in the, shake your hand, they're the alphas? Okay. I think that it's got to have something to do with the life-defining event that they all experienced together, the pandemic. So Gen P, Gen C, those sound too much like Z. That's confusing. So I like COVID kids. If you hear anybody call them the COVID kids, you know they stole it from me. We'll sue them together and split the settlement. How does that sound? So this is the same information presented a little bit differently. This is the birth rate through the United States during these 4 generations. And I want you to look at the boomers, how big they are. It's in their name, the boomers, 75 million, especially how big compared to their parents' generation that preceded them. I mean, they doubled them up. So when this massive generation of boomers became moms and dads, we see a fundamental shift in the way we raise our kids in this country. When this massive generation turned 18 and started voting, we see political, social change. So because of their massive size, the boomers influenced so much change in this country. Now that doesn't mean that the next generation up, poor Gen X, doesn't mean that they don't have convictions and morals and values. Of course you do, to be sure. But when it was your turn to be the young professional as a Gen Xer, it was a baby boomer-dominated world. You probably had some constructive criticism to give on the process, but guess what? Nobody cared because there was 3 boomers that would have happily taken the job that you were complaining about. So if you don't like the way we do things around here, there's the door. Don't let it hit you or the good Lord split you. We don't owe you an explanation, right? And if you were a Gen Xer, you played by those old rules. You paid your dues. You put in your time. The boomer in front of you finally retires, and guess what your reward is? You get to manage the millennials who want to work 3 days a week and leave at 3 o'clock if the project's looking on time, right? Congratulations with that promotion. I can pretty much guarantee you that as a Gen Xer, when you were the young professional, we weren't sending generational differences speakers around the country to try to get the boomers to be nicer to you at work so that you didn't quit, right? And it kind of feels like that's what's being asked of you now. So Gen X feels some frustration with this. And I got a lot more to say today, but I want to know who we've got in the room this afternoon. So by show of hands, I want to know what generation you identify with. So if you identify as either the veteran generation or a baby boomer, for me, that's my parents and grandparents. Boomers and veterans, hands up. All right, thank you for joining us today. If you're anything like my grandpa, you were the first ones to show up today before they even unlocked the doors, probably. Do we got any Gen Xers in the house? Let's see ya. All right, I've been told this is a therapy session for Gen X managers, so I hope you appreciate that. And how about my millennials? Represent. Okay, I'll make sure we get the last word in this discussion, just like in real life. Just like in real life. And do we have any Gen Zs, 27, 28 and unders? All right, we got a couple. Are you on TikTok right now? I'm sorry, that was a cheap shot. Don't worry, I got a boomer cheap shot coming up quick here in a minute. So I'll get way more serious now, way more serious, and ask rhetorically, what is it that makes a generation? What is it that made your generation who you are? Because if you were 18, 19, 20 years old and this was your life reality, think how that is going to stay with you and shape who you are for the rest of your life. And I'll never forget a gentleman who I met after one of my keynotes who served. And he came down to speak with me, and through the tears in his eyes, both of our eyes, by the time he was done, he taught me about survivor guilt. That he came home feeling guilty. That he didn't feel special, he didn't feel important. He said there were so many other stronger, braver men around me that ran out first and didn't come home. And he came home feeling that guilt. And I can't even imagine how scared these young men must have been with bullets pinging off that boat, and you got to run out onto that beach. And an entire generation put we above me. And if we think about what this generation lived through, Second World War, if we look a little bit further back, they either lived through the Depression or they were significantly influenced by its impact and aftermath. Like my mom, she's a baby boomer. She did not live through the Great Depression, but she was impacted by it. I mean, to this day, that woman does not throw out aluminum foil. She rinses it off and uses the other side. I went home to check on her the other day, and she had Ziploc bags that were rinsed and hanging to dry so she could reuse them. She keeps a little cooking grease container up on the top of the stove like, Steve Areno, don't throw that grease out. That's good grease. I would have gotten in trouble. So she didn't live through these times, but she was impacted by them. She was raised by the generation who did. And if we think about what Grandma and Grandpa lived through, if this was your childhood, you didn't forget any of those life experiences. You internalized it, became a part of who you were as an adult. And what came out the other end for the kids of this generation, people like my grandma and grandpa, they learned that an adult is someone who gets their identity through work. My grandma and grandpa are the hardest working people I've ever known in my entire life. It's not even close. Grandpa's been retired for 25 years. He still finds something to work on every single day. And I think it's a result of that childhood trauma. That when he was growing up, he saw adults sacrificing, struggling, working hard, being reliable, providers that were loyal and accountable. Those were the markers of adulthood for this generation. If Grandma and Grandpa wanted to get into the adult club and earn the respect of their friends, then this is how they did it. They would go on to raise the boomers. My mom and dad, totally different generation, who had a completely different set of life experiences and economic opportunity. The boomers had more economic opportunity at the time than any generation in American history. We haven't globalized our world economy yet, so we're still making everything in the United States, manufacturing, kicking butt, taking names, town factories all across the country where you don't need a fancy, expensive college degree to be middle class. You could have a good salary, good health care for the people you love, a pension waiting for you when you retire. And when that was the loyalty oath between employer and employee, that's why you see Grandpa roll with one company for 50 years and not play any games, because he knew he was going to get taken care of. Fast forward to 2023, maybe we can't offer that same benefits package. We're going to talk about this when we get to the Gen Xers, but maybe you saw that town factory close. You saw a whole bunch of men and women who gave their adult identity to this job that just got ripped out from underneath them. So maybe a lot of young people are starting to say, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to give you my best, but this is not what defines who I am as an adult. I get my identity outside of work too. My friends, my family, they're going to like me, love me, respect me, not necessarily because of what I do, but because of who I am. And we start to see a shift away from work being the sole source of my adult identity. But for this generation of boomers, life was different. Being an adult was different compared to me and my millennial man-child friends. I mean, this is what an adult was for the boomers. If you wanted to earn the respect of your friends and get into the boomer club, well, you probably got to move out of your parents' basement before you turn 30, for starters, okay? I still have friends that live at home. They don't think it's a big deal because their parents are among their friends. But my mom and dad, they would have been laughed out of the room if they tried to pull that. So if you were a boomer, being an adult meant get out there on your own, be self-reliant. Go find a job and hold it down. Find a spouse, start a family, buy a house. These were the markers of adulthood for the boomers. And this is what my parents were chasing. And by the time my mom and dad were 25 years old, which, by the way, is the age of Gen Z today, they had already gotten married, gone into debt, bought a house, and had 3 kids under the age of 10 by 25. And as a result of that, they both had to grow up and get much more serious about their career. This was the lifestyle they were chasing, right? And the boomers were also the generation who shifted parenting. This was a generation that said, you know what, my kids are special. They're going to know it because we're never going to miss one of her games. We're going to be at every single one of his tournaments. We're going to be at those recitals. We're going to let that kid know how important they are to this family. And there's stereotypes out there that, is this just a rich family thing? Yeah, the more money we have at home, the more easily we can just throw money around. A lot of these issues become more pronounced. But I coach AAU basketball. I see kids and families from every corner of the country and every socioeconomic category. Whether there's a lot of money at home or not, this still holds up because it doesn't cost a thing to show up and show out and let those kids know how important they are to this family. The other point that's underpinning all of this is the American family's been getting smaller and smaller. Maybe you're a boomer who grew up with 4, 5, 6 siblings. Can you imagine trying to raise 6 kids today? How incredibly expensive that would be, and how busy kids are. My friend who is a grown man, married, mortgage, kids, grown man. I'm a man-child. I still watch SpongeBob on Saturday mornings. But my best friend, who's a real man, he was telling me, my kids are busier than me and my wife. Like, they got something every single day after school, so they're more supported, encouraged than ever before. And we protect them from failure. And that comes from a place of good intentions, but it has some unintended consequences. It's a dangerous, scary world. Bad news travels fast. So if some kid in California, something bad happens, we pretty much hear about it in real time on social. We don't want that to happen to our kid, so we pay attention to them. We know what they're up to. We know what they're doing. Now, hopefully we've made some progress away from being helicopter parents, but we still don't just let the kids ride off in the morning and, hey, have a good day, I'll see you later at dinner, right? I mean, we know what they're up to. And put yourself in the shoes of the kid now. If at any time in your life something was dangerous, difficult, dirty, or stressful, do we let the kid try it, maybe get hurt, learn a life lesson, or do we kind of help get him started? Now, Grandpa would say, no, let him climb all the way up to the top and fall down. He's only going to break his arm once, and then he's going to learn, right? Well, fortunately, we've made some social progress. We don't let kids break bones to learn life lessons anymore. Okay, I think that's a good thing. But the outcome is, if I'm the young kid now, anytime I feel stressed or anxious or depressed, there's always a teacher, a parent, or a coach to default to ask questions to rely on. And whether that's right or wrong or otherwise, that's why we get a 20-year-old who comes in and works for us, and they don't expect that level of support and feedback to change. It's the only way they've ever related to their authority figures. And as a result of that, rich, poor, or in the middle, we produce kids in this country that feel powerful, important, and successful. And we're going to talk about little trophy boy in a minute, okay, when we get to the millennials. But if you've been following along, we started with the veterans, then we moved on to the baby boomers. The boomers raised the trophy millennials, so we jumped ahead a little bit to make that connection. But what generation did I just skip right over? Generation X. Let's make a round of applause for Gen X, please. This is your trophy part of the presentation. We're going to make you feel special just for attending today and give you an attendance trophy. You gave us Nirvana, so shout out for that. You gave us the Breakfast Club, so 2 for 2 on the pop culture score. And if you were a Gen Xer, maybe you can relate to this meme. And if you're a baby boomer, a meme is a picture with words on it. I'm sorry, that was another cheap shot. But you probably had a punishment spoon. You probably ate your fair share of lead paint. You didn't have a car seat to buckle or a bike helmet to wear or any safety equipment of any kind, for that matter. You just drank out of the garden hose, you rode in the back of the pickup truck or the wood-paneled station wagon, and you survived it all, right? A generation of survivors. And I think that for Gen X, your childhood was different. Maybe you saw your parents struggle. Maybe that town factory that gave everybody that middle-class identity, maybe that closed up. The economy was starting to change, and we see that loyalty oath start to break down. And if you were a Gen X kid, 2 things that were different for you, one negative, one positive. The negative is the divorce rate goes through the roof. So you had to normalize that I'm with mom this week, I'm with dad next week, and always somewhere in between. On a much more positive trend, we see women entering the workforce, which is social progress to be sure. But what it meant for the kids who lived through that adjustment was you came home from school to an empty house. Mom's not waiting at the door with a plate of cookies and milk to ask how your day went. Mom's out there working, earning for the family, maybe being the primary breadwinner for the family. So whereas the millennials like me were pretty much supervised 24/7, 365, I'm guessing that was not your reality as a Gen Xer. I'm guessing your average summer day, you were probably literally kicked out the screen door, told to go off and play, and you weren't supposed to come home until when? Help me out. Till the street lights came on or the sun went down. Maybe your hometown didn't have street lights. That's okay. But you went off and you played, no adults around, you didn't come home till the sun went down. And that might just seem like nostalgia. Think about how much the world has changed since those simpler days. But it's way more to it than just nostalgia. Think about how you were growing up on those independent summer days. Some of the Gen Xers I've spoke to told me the adults were literally never there. We raised ourselves. Well, that means that by the time you turn 25, you've got a lot more life experience dealing with your own situations and facing consequences, right? There were no adults there. So I'm guessing that when it was kids only, just your friends, every once in a while, you made a few bad decisions, right? Maybe more than a few, depending on who our friend group was. But get this, you actually had to face the consequences of your actions. Pretty novel concept to the millennial who's always had helicopter parenting. So when I leave my essay assignment on the breakfast table and I'm at school and I'm about to get a 0, who do I text to bring it to me? Or when I'm in school and I goof off all semester, I didn't do any of my responsibilities, I'm about to get a bad grade, so I realize that, I go up to the teacher, what do I ask for? Where's my extra credit? I mean, I know I neglected my responsibilities all semester, but I'm ready to work now and I don't want to face a consequence of that bad grade, so where's my extra credit? We haven't faced consequences the same way that Gen X did. And if you live this lifestyle, that by the time you turn 25, you're a lot more resilient, a lot more self-reliant, and a lot more independent because you were allowed to face failure and have to deal with it yourself, as opposed to a kid today, which seems like they always have this army of well-intentioned adults to swoop in and make everything fair. And for the Gen Xers, you have the true dilemma. We said this at the beginning. It was a baby boomer-dominated world. You had to play by their rules, and you had to conform. You did it their way. And in a lot of ways, it might feel like you were the last generation through the door before we started changing all the rules. And now this is who you get to manage. A generation of kids who literally got trophies for attending school. What used to be the baseline expectation, showing up, is now being rewarded with trophies, as if it's some sort of admirable behavior trait. And we wonder why young people have issues with accountability and commitment. It's because we've been giving them trophies for getting to school on time. And if you want to know who to blame, because this is America, baby, so we like to be able to point the finger and say it was his fault, I found him. Look at this sick freak. He's giving himself a hug. Dr. Nathan Brandon. And he wrote this paper where he said, your self-esteem is the most important part of who you are, because if you don't believe in yourself, you're never going to achieve your best performance. That's the kind of thing that I say in the locker room before a big basketball game to my grade school boys. It's like, boys, yeah, the team that we're about to play that's warming up, yeah, they've got a boy that can dunk. Ooh, big deal. If you don't think we can beat them, don't even come out of the locker room. You got to believe it to achieve it. So it was a pretty good message, but we took it, we over-applied it to everything, and before you know it, junior's coming home from school with an attendance trophy. And this little modern parenting case we're talking about, it works when our kid is this fragile little 8-year-old that just needs to be protected and encouraged. But Billy's going to grow up someday. He's going to take a job with you fine folks, and we're not going to think he's as special as his mom's been telling him his whole life. He's going to have a bad day. He's going to get chewed out. And whereas the Gen Xers had a little bit more resiliency and self-reliance, maybe Gen Z doesn't. And when they have a bad day, they don't have the same common sense and life skills and coping mechanisms, so they just crumble and we lose them. What is the reality of what's driving this? We're losing boomers to retirement at about 10,000 per day. Gen X is too small to replace them, so we now have more jobs available in this country than people able or willing to work them. That means that the employees now have the leverage, not the employer. The boss used to have the leverage. Good jobs were hard to find, and there were more people who wanted those good jobs than jobs. Now it feels like the employee almost has unlimited choice about where and how they can get their work done. They don't need any of our traditional jobs. They can drive Uber or rent out their apartment on Airbnb. So in other words, we need to understand that we need them more than they need us, and that needs to come through in our culture. And millennials like me, we have a lot of leverage because we've delayed our adulthood, and we've got a family safety net underneath us. So if I can't pay my bills and I'm struggling and I lose my job, am I going to go sleep in my car, or am I going to go sleep at the homeless shelter? Where does a millennial go back to when times get tough? Back home, right? Mom left my bedroom just how I like it. I got my Snoop Dogg poster on the wall and all my Tupac and Biggie CDs, right? Trophies on my nightstand. People look at that and they're like, Steve, you're like Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. You just want to be a kid forever and never grow up. And a lot of us are trying to see if we can pull that off because we're delaying our adulthood. We are delaying the traditional life stages that forced my mom and dad to grow up by age 25. But I'm a geriatric millennial. I'm 40 years old, okay? I'm still not at this life stage. I can guarantee you Gen Z is not married with a mortgage and 3 kids. So if we don't have the house and we don't need the spouse, there's no kids that we know about, all of a sudden now, I've got more freedom, flexibility, and mobility than any generation in American history. And to me, that is what defines the millennials. Delayed adulthood, and as a result of that delayed life stage, I might be able to prioritize my lifestyle over my career. And all of your jobs just got more difficult, sorry to say, because now we're not just competing against other employers for that talented employee, we're competing directly against their lifestyle. And we have to show them the flexibilities, the accommodations we've made over the last few years, that this job is not going to compete with your lifestyle, it's going to complement it. Okay, we're going to show you people who work the job before you. We're going to show you what you need to do to make more money. We don't expect you to be an expert yet. We're going to teach you what you need to know to be successful at this job. That's the culture. And it's a challenge because it feels like we're doing all this work to build culture, and the generation that we're trying to attract seems like they're the least engaged ones in the whole group. And patience is not a millennial strength. So changing your culture and improving it, that's honorable work, but it's slow work. It's not like you push a button or flip a switch and your culture's different. But I'm a millennial conditioned to live in 2023 when everything is on demand, a push, a click away. So patience is not our strength. We're the attention deficit disorder kids with some serious immediate gratification problems. So we're not likely to wait around for your culture to change. We're going to quit, go find somewhere else that's a better fit. And making all of our lives more difficult is the smartphone. Because before smartphones came along, we used to put our faith and trust into an authority. And for as much as smartphones have given us, they've also taken a lot away. And the authority piece is a huge part of that. We used to default to an authority. At home, it was father knows best. In the classroom, never question your teacher. When the news came on, regardless of whether we voted red or blue, we used to actually watch the news together and be like, oh, that's what happened today. Can't even agree on facts. We go to the doctor, and it's like, well, geez, doc, I know you went to med school for 20 years, and this is literally your life's work, but I was on WebMD last night, and I think you're wrong. I think this is what I have. Like, look, this is what I have. Like, you're wrong, and I got it right here. It's almost like I've convinced myself that I'm the smartest person in the room because I got this smartphone in my pocket. And we can remember, right? I mean, there are generations in the room. I'm a millennial. There's older generations than me, but in my lifetime, I cannot recall a time when we have been more divided. The enemy used to be over there, the Nazis, the communists, the terrorists, and when the enemy was them, at home it was us, and united we stand. But today, it feels like the enemy is the neighbor with the political yard sign and all those stupid bumper stickers, or my kid's teacher that's trying to brainwash them, right? It's like now it feels like the enemy lives next door. So united we stand, but divided we fall. And we can remember before the world changed into what we know it is now. But you know who can't remember? You know who's not old enough to know any different? And this is the only world they've ever known. Neighbors fighting with each other, people talking trash about teachers, no respect for law enforcement, not encouraging kids to go into the trades. Outside of the people in this room, by the way, that nonprofit sounded pretty darn awesome to me. So I want to talk to that dude, okay? But the bottom line here is Gen Z, this is the only world that they've ever known. They're already cynical and skeptical and stressed out about inheriting a world that they think is already on fire. I quiz my Shark Tank kids, what is your greatest fear? Their greatest fear is that they're not going to find happiness. They've lived in a world that tells them they're not good enough. Likes and followers, and all of it is quantified. All of it affects their mental health. They're worried they're not going to find happiness. I've met people all across this room already today that I can tell you like what you do. I can tell you enjoy the people you work with. I can see a confidence in you that your career gives you a piece of your adult identity. That's the story we need to tell Gen Z. They're not afraid to work hard for it. They're just afraid to fail in front of everybody on social media. They're risk averse, and we're going to talk about that too. So what are the biggest differences between Gen Z and millennials? Well, I thought I was special. I was told I could do anything I want in the entire world. Sesame Street, Barney, okay, there were a lot of influences. Gen Z today, they are way more realistic, way more informed. They know everything. They can find it whenever they want to, right? So they're much more pragmatic. They know how expensive college is. They know about cost of living. So they are way more realistic and informed than the millennials were at the same age. These kids all have social media, right? And I'll quiz them, is social media toxic? 100% of the hands go up. Next question. Do you think it's possible for you to fit in and feel normal if you don't participate on social media? No. What everybody's talking about this morning is what happened online last night, and if I'm not participating, then I'm missing out on what my generation is doing. So they know that it's bad for their mental health. They also feel like it's an indispensable part of their social fabric. That is one of the hardest parts about being a teenager. Their parents didn't live through this. Their grandparents didn't live through it. We're asking an immature, developing teenage brain to make mature decisions about navigating the social media minefield. All of the negative metrics are going in the wrong direction. Anxiety, depression, suicide, and social media has everything to do with it. The world around us that we were just describing, where we fight about everything, politics, social justice, climate change, we can't agree on anything, that's the world they think that they're inheriting. They joked with me, half joking, half serious, we've already all got PTSD. I go, PTSD, what are you talking about? He goes, we're pissed, we're tired, we're stressed, and we're depressed. PTSD, and they're not even 28 years old yet. So how do you build culture that attracts Gen Z? Well, you got to start with the people you have. Those skeptical mentors that are saying, so if I just help them, aren't I just another part of the problem? Just one more negative reinforcement if I just make their lives easier? Because my life was hard. And these kids today, they got it easy. You want me to be a mentor to them when they're completely aloof about the responsibilities of this job? They're unrealistic about the expectations and their compensation. They're not nearly as committed as I was. They're quick to be the victim anytime something is unfair to them. And they just lack common sense. They have no common sense. It's so frustrating. I see some nodding heads out there, by the way, so maybe we can relate to some of those. But I'm going to push back on common sense. What is common sense? Isn't common sense that somebody showed you something once when you were little and you never needed to see it again? Or just the way you were raised and brought up, you've learned your common sense? But maybe that new employee didn't have the same life experience as you did. Maybe in their family, they weren't even allowed to climb up to the top of the jungle gym because it's too dangerous up there. So don't assume I'm going to bring the same level of life experience and common sense, and then don't be upset when it plays out in front of you. It's not really those kids' fault. We're all products of the culture that raised us. I have a room full of trophies. I didn't buy any of those. Me and my friends got cell phones when we were in high school and college. I had to pay for mine because my parents were old school, but none of my friends did, right? So we're products of the culture that raised us. And these stereotypes just get in the way. They need so much feedback. They ask so many questions. They won't just take initiative and try to get started on their own to see if they can do it. I literally have to hold their hand, get them started, talk them through it, check up on them in the middle, and then ask how it went at the end of the day. I don't even have time to get my work done now. And then when he messes up, I can't even criticize him because I feel like if I tell him how it really is, I'm going to hurt his feelings, he's going to quit, and we're never going to see him again. Can we relate to some of those stereotypes? I think they came from this old rule of the workplace. No news is good news. Remember that one? If I'm your boss and you haven't heard from me all week, you can assume everything is fine. Okay, we're all busy. I'm not going to find you once a day and think of a compliment to praise you with and blow smoke up your rear end. That's not what we're here for. We're here to work. And that was what built the business world for 50 years. But fast forward to 2023, if you're working with people under the age of 40, that is going to be the opposite of what we expect. For every parent, teacher, coach we've had, there's been validation and dialogue and supervision and encouragement. We're not going to expect that to change when we trade our backpack for a briefcase. And if your management strategy is that the only time you interact with those young employees is when they made a mistake, right? So no news is good news. That means if I see you, it's bad news. So every time we interact, it's to fix a problem or a mistake that I made. I'm going to think I stink at my job. I'm going to probably resent whoever trained me. Bottom line, I'm going to quit. You're going to lose me. So how do we avoid that? It starts with trust. You have to earn their trust and respect. You have to connect before you correct. Like my basketball boys, I get in their face drill sergeant style, and I scream at them, and they take it like little men. They never cry because I knew that I needed to connect with them before I corrected them, right? And it starts with feedback, especially this window of opportunity when I'm new, I'm the new hire, I haven't even messed up yet, I'm not on anybody's shit list yet, right? So like it's all still good. Get to know me, form a bond, find some common ground, and build that relationship. Here's how I do it with the basketball boys. Let's get specific, okay? You have to find common ground. You have to be able to set your ego aside and be a little bit vulnerable, and you got to be authentic, or in the words of my boys, not fake. So here's how we do it. When the games are over and it's time to go out to dinner, we all go out to eat together. The boys pick the restaurant. Pretty common, right? The boys pick Buffalo Wild Wings every single time. Every single time, Buffalo Wild Wings. Fine. So we go back to Buffalo Wild Wings. The boys get seated. They have a favorite game they like to play. They know that good old coach is still single, still a bachelor. So you see where this is going. So as soon as they sit down, they're hunting around for a waitress. Oh, her. They pick out some poor girl. They write a love note on a bar napkin with my real cell phone number. And then my point guard goes up to her and he goes, my coach thinks you're super pretty and he wants you to have this. And then they run off into the corner and hide. And then it's coach's turn, and I got to go get her number. And y'all, I suck at talking to girls. So I'm blushing, and I'm sweating, I'm embarrassing myself. The team's in the corner just dying laughing, right? Coach is so pathetic. He's got no game. It's so funny, right? So what was I doing? I found some common ground. I'm not good at talking to girls. I know they're not good at talking to girls or boys yet either, by the way. So we found some common ground. I have a healthy ego, okay? I do. But every once in a while, I'm cool with the joke being on me, right? 1 out of 100 days, I'll put on the mascot costume and be the goofball, okay? My ego isn't that big. As long as the other 99% of the time, I'm getting out of you what I know you're capable of. And when I don't see it, you can hold them as accountable as you need to. Because my boys, they know I care about them. They know that when I really blow my lid and freak out on them, it's not because we're losing. It's not because you missed your shot. It's because I know what you're capable of. And I know that you're not giving me your best, and I'm calling you out. I'm holding you accountable. Not because I'm mad at you. It's because I'm disappointed. I expected more. So I want you to think of some of the very best mentors you've ever had. Not the ones that sucked, the ones you really, really cared about, that really cared about you. When they told you you messed up, when they criticized you, when they called you out, how did that make you feel? It cuts you deep, right? Because of the amount of respect you have for that person. So for me, my mentor was Jim Morgan. And Jim has been better to me than my biological father. My dad hasn't been in my life for 20 years, but Jim has. And when Jim would call me out and when he would criticize me, those are some of the worst professional days of my life because of the amount of respect and trust I had for that man. But if Jim hadn't taken the time to build a bond with me first, to get to know me, to connect before he corrected, then I would have never received his criticism the manner in which he intended it. So when it comes to winning over these skeptical mentors, we have to do it with demographics. We're not asking you to be nicer for no reason. We're asking you to do it because we're on the cliff of an employment crisis in this country. So demographics. Decline of young people. This is an awesome place to raise kids, but a lot of those kids turn 18. They want to go move somewhere else where it's more quote-unquote exciting. We struggle to attract domestic employees to migrate to us. I'm guessing that when kids in Florida and California turn 18, they aren't thinking, yes, I can finally move to Connecticut or Wisconsin and start my life, right? They should be, but they might not be. We're not a population hub. The fastest growing urban centers in the United States, this is where young people want to be. Ask my Shark Tank kids, where do you want to be in 10 years? I get something off of this chart. We're older than the rest of the country. Percent of the population over age 65, so we struggle to attract younger employees because we're a little bit older than the rest of the union. And we are projected over the next several decades to have fewer people between the ages of 15 and 64 than we do today. If you thought the problem was hard now, it's going to continue to get worse. So we need you. We need all of you at the table. If we all were to just retire in 5 years and I'm done trying to teach, all of that tribal knowledge walks out the door with you, and how much harder it's going to be for the rest of us. So when it comes to hiring Gen Z, what are they going to expect? And maybe even demand? Now, demand might be a strong word, but this is basically saying if I have unlimited choice about where I choose to work, I'm not going to work for somewhere that doesn't align with my values. So I want to see representation. I want my employer to be socially responsible and inclusive. I want them to be transparent with their policies and practices. When it comes to managing Gen Z, here's 4 things I want to talk to you about today. And by the way, if anybody wants a copy of this slide deck, you can find me on LinkedIn, Steve Bench. Just say hello, and I'll send you the slides. Or my website is stevebench.com. Same deal. Send me a little hello, and I'll send you the slides. But their life stage, their learning style, what they want access to, and how to retain them. The life stage of your Gen Z employees, they are not going to be married with a mortgage and 3 kids. That means they have a fundamentally different decision-making profile. And depending on their life stage, they might look at all of you as their work family. You guys heard that one? Work family? Does it make anybody's eyes roll or their stomach turn? Like, work family, my God, I'm already a dad, okay? I don't have time to be somebody's work dad, all right? I already raised my kids. I'm not raising the ones I work with. But I want you to think of my former intern. He's Gen Z. He has had 22 jobs in the last 4 years. I literally made him write a list because I knew he would leave some of them off. And by the way, I'm one of the people on the list that got left, that's on that list. I'm one of the 22. But we're still friends. We still stay in touch. He's been at his current job longer than all of them. And I'm convinced it's because he found a work family. You should hear him talk about this lady he works with. I think he's literally in love with her as a mother. I think she likes it even more because before he went on vacation, she found him and gave him a lecture about wearing sunscreen and don't stay out late at night by yourself, take a lot of pictures so I can see all the fun you have when you come back. So he loves that. So I'm not telling you, go back to the office, go back to the shop, go onto the job site, walk up to a millennial and say, hey, I'm your new work dad, okay? You don't have to do that. You don't have to do any of this if you're not comfortable with it, right? It's not going to be authentic. But if the question is, how can we increase our retention rates? How can we cultivate a little bit better sense of belonging? Those emotional connections that we make with the young people we work with might mean a whole lot more to them than we realize. Does your company pass the iPhone test? Can I apply for the job on my phone? Because if I can't, you're already making Gen Z's life more difficult, and they're not going to jump through any hoops for us. And what is your presence on the big 5 social media platforms? Okay, are you on TikTok? That is Gen Z TV. It is where all the eyeballs are. If you're not advertising job opportunities on TikTok, you're missing out. Do you utilize YouTube? Gen Z spends 6 hours a day watching YouTube videos. They'll happily watch a few more if it'll make them a better employee. So turn this into a contest. Everyone in this room, find the best YouTube resource you can for your industry. We'll have a contest. We'll pick the best one, and that gets a prize. Then we're left with this catalog of 200 different resources that Gen Z will happily spend some time scrolling through to become a better employee. Snapchat came up with the streak, one of the most brilliant concepts in social media history. So how do you use streaks at work? How long have we gone without a safety-related incident? That's an important streak. How long is the Gen Z employee with the longest streak of working at your company? Do you know who that is? I mean, there are simple ways to gamify our workplace by taking social media mechanics and putting them into the workplace. We have to help Gen Z thrive. Okay? They are not future-focused, they are now-focused. Future-focused was the baby boomers. 3 kids under 10, not going anywhere for 30 years. They'll happily wait 5 years to vest into some program. But Gen Z ain't going to wait 5 years. They don't know what they're doing in 5 years. They don't know what they're doing in 5 days. So the benefits, the milestones, the recognition need to be much shorter, much more frequent. The benefits need to be reevaluated. If I can be on my mom's health care till I'm 26, then I don't care how good your health care is. It doesn't move the needle for me. Some of my friends have employers that pay their Netflix subscription. Costs $12 a month. My friend won't shut up about it. Every time we go out, he tells the stupid story that his boss plays for his streaming platforms, right? Costs $12. My friend Katie, her boss pays her dog's health care. That's really cool to us millennials, right? Some of us, our kids have 4 legs and fleas. So if somebody wants to pay for Lucy's health care, I think that's pretty darn cool, right? Are you using reverse mentoring? Because Gen Z, they want to learn from you. But in the words of some of my students, just because I said I want to learn from you doesn't mean I want you to talk at me for 8 hours. They need to be involved in the process. It needs to be a back and forth. They've got a lot they can teach us too, maybe about how to leverage our presence on social media. And this is the generation that was born online. Coming down the home stretch here before we say good afternoon. But if you want to capture Gen Z's attention, when they want to know how to do something, they just Google it. They don't raise their hand and wait to be called on. They don't ask grandpa to go teach them how. They get on YouTube and they find a tutorial. They get their news through social. They get a room. They get a ride. They do their shopping. They live their life through the phone that's in their pocket. And if we don't make more intentional effort to connect with Gen Z through the channels that they prefer, we might not be able to get their attention at all. And when they come and work for us, here's my final thought as I say good afternoon. When they come in, they're going to ask why. They're not trying to be insubordinate. When they ask why, that's their way of saying, I don't understand the way you explained it. Why isn't it a different way? They're going to challenge things. They're not trying to be insubordinate. They're not trying to be disrespectful. But to that generation, the best idea, it doesn't always come from whoever's at the top of the org chart. Good information, good ideas, they're all around us, and we're all on the network. So nowadays, the best idea might not always come from the person that's at the top. So are you open to being challenged? Because when they come in and they question the process and they challenge the paradigm, they're doing what we have been rewarding them for their whole life, which is to get on the network and to find the best way to do something. So be open to being challenged. And when you work with difficult young professionals, because you will, okay, if you thought millennials were bad, just wait till Gen Z gets here. They're going to be even more disruptive. Keep this rule of thumb in mind. When you work with difficult ones, don't let it ruin your attitude towards the rest of us. There's a third of us that get it. There's a third that can be taught. And there's a third that are just a lost cause. So forget about Beebs and the geriatrics. Focus on the 1/3 who want to learn from you. They might care more about their lifestyle than their career, but it doesn't mean that we can't help show them how to get a piece of that adult identity through work. They're just going to need our help to do it. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much. We have time for one quick question. We're going to take a 10-minute bathroom break. But if anybody has a quick question for Steve. Steve, as always, wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? And if not, I'm going to be hanging around the rest of the night. I'm here till tomorrow. So if you find me, I'd love to talk with you.